looking at the polling, and it's not simply the polling numbers, it's not how would you vote in a general election tomorrow, it's those crucial, the sort of the undercard. If you ask pollsters about it, they say, yeah, those are the things, they get the headlines, but what's really important is who do you think is the most a suitable person to be the Prime Minister. Theresa May wins that ahead of Jeremy Corbyn by a country mile, and of course there's no one else that you could consider as being the Prime Minister. And the second thing is, which party do you most trust to look after the economy? And the Conservatives win on that as well. They won on both those two things in 2015, and people were slightly blindsided to the fact that they then got an overall majority where they thought they were going to fall short of that. But Theresa May is doing better than David Cameron on both those measures, and that will have played very considerably into her thinking.
And how significant do you think that the local elections will be in terms of when people come to make up their minds in the general election?
Well, Diana she was talking, fighting a brave fight about the local elections. The fact of the matter is that most of the local elections are taking place in rural England and then throughout Scotland and Wales, and nobody was really expecting Labour to have a particularly good show in England because these are not by any stretch their strongest areas. There are no elections in London and only some mayoral elections in parts of metropolitan England. In Wales, the comparison year is 2012, when Labour under Ed Miliband did extremely well, and nobody was really expecting Labour to be able to do anything like as well in Wales this time, even if their result was perfectly respectable. So there will be lost seats there. And similarly in Scotland, where the SNP now sort of steamrollers all before it, the attention was much more going to be on, whether the Conservatives could pick up more seats and perhaps more influence on councils. And Labour still currently holds a handful of councils in Scotland and is very likely to suffer the indignity of losing control in Glasgow for the first time. The great sort of flagship Labour area of Glasgow, which of course voted for independence in 2014 and gave the SNP a clean sweep in both the 2015 general election and the 2016 Scottish Assembly elections. So wherever you look as a Labour politician, and Diana, what I suspect privately, is trying not to look very far and hard, there isn't likely to be much news coming on May the 4th, and that will just simply reinforce what may well be the narrative of the general election campaign. OK, Colin Rallans in Newcastle for us. Thank you very much. Well, we are trying to bring you more from Theresa May while we are just briefly waiting for that. We haven't talked much about UKIP. Is that significant in itself, Christian?
It's funny that we've barely mentioned UKIP this morning, isn't it? I think that rather explains the different landscape that we're now in after the EU referendum last year. We've got a different leader of UKIP. Paul Nuttall's now the leader, not Nigel Farage. How they will do at this election will be very important, how they play up against the Conservatives. So it's a very different landscape.
Christian, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you there. Robert Peston has been speaking to Theresa May. Here's what they had to say.